Hello, and I am on Chapter 8, Lesson 8. We're doing problem solving with fractions. The math page in your book is 531. That's where we're starting. And our essential question is, how can different fractions name the same amount? Okay, first example. Marla used flour, sugar, and brown sugar to make a treat. Use the clues below to find the amount of each ingredient she used. The amounts were 3/4 cup, 1/4 cup, and 2/3 cup. She used more flour than sugar. She used more sugar than brown sugar. Okay, so what I already know, I know Marla used more flour than sugar and more sugar than brown sugar. So these first two lines, let me make this a little bigger. She used more flour than sugar and more sugar than brown sugar. We need to find the amount of each ingredient that she used. So those are the first parts, and the way that I can write that in math is I can write flour. She used more flour than sugar, and she used more sugar than brown sugar. Okay, and these are the math terms for that. Okay, so now now that I know that this is the greatest, this is the middle, and this is the least, now I can put my fractions in order from greatest to least, and then I can match them up to these. Okay, so I've got 3/4 cup, I've got 1/4 cup, and I've got 2/3 cup. Now one way I can do it is I can draw my models, and I can draw my quarters and my thirds, and I can shade 3/4, and I can shade 1/4 and 2/3, or I can convert and I can find my multiples of 3 and my multiples of 4. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and I see 12 is my least common multiple there. So then I'm going to change all of these denominators to 12. And 4 times 3 is 12, because 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do the same to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to do the same thing to the top, because that's multiplying by 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Now I'm going to go to my 3's. 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. So 3 times 4 is 12. Same thing to the top. 4 times 2 is 8. So now if I can't tell from my pictures, which you kind of can, you can see that 3/4 is the greatest, and then 1/4 is the least. And then you've got 2/3 kind of in the middle. But if you can't see that well from your illustrations, then you can clearly see it using these models here. 9/12 is the greatest, so that matches to 3/4, which is going to go to flour. 3/4. The middle one is 8/12, which matches to 2/3. And the least is 3/12 or 1/4 or 1/4, which is going to match to the brown sugar. So that's how we can use logical reasoning and our comparing fractions in order to solve this equation. The greatest fraction is 3/4, so Marla used 3/4 cup of flour. She used 2/3 cup of sugar and 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Yes, the amounts of the ingredients match the clues. So that's how that one is done. Unfortunately, many of the problems in this lesson are done exactly the same way. You'll see that repeated, more this than that, more that than that, and that'll help you through the word problems that they have on this page, but we'll do some more together. Okay, so we've got the same type of thing here, except for making salsa instead of a treat. Amir is making salsa using tomatoes, onions, and black beans. Use the clues to find the amount of each ingredient he used. The amounts are 1/2, 3/4, and 1/3. And again, just like in the last problem, he is using more tomatoes than black beans and more black beans than onions. So we can do tomatoes is greater than the black beans. And down the second one here, it says black beans is greater than onions. So once we have that, then we can match our fractions to that. Okay, so I've got 1/2, 3/4, and 1/3. I can draw my visuals. 1/2, 3/4. Oops. And 1/3. And that makes it pretty clear which one is the greatest, hopefully, for most of you. If we want to go ahead and do the multiples of all of our denominators, I'm going to do my multiples of 2, 3, and 4. And I can see that 12 is the least common multiple of 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to change all these denominators to equivalent fractions with denominator 12. 2 times 6 gives me 12. 1 times 6 gives me 6. 4 times 3 gives me 12. 3 times 3 gives me 9. 3 times 4 gives me 12. 1 times 4 gives me 4. So now I can see 6/12, 9/12, and 4/12. So my 9/12 is the greatest out of these. That's going to match with the tomatoes because the tomatoes is the greatest. 9/12 matches to 3/4. Next comes the 6/12, which is equivalent to 1/2. So that's going to be the black beans. And the onions is the least at 4/12 or 1/3. So you can either use the models here, if that's where you're at, that's perfectly fine. If you do your models and you can't really tell, then you're going to want to write out your multiples, find your equivalent fractions, and compare your equivalent fractions in order to put them in order. Okay, now I'm on page 533, and we have the same type of thing. The only thing different here is they're going less and less. So before we were having the greatest for each item, and this time we're working from least to greatest basically. So I'd like you to try and pause the video and try and solve number 1 on your own, and then come back to this because it is so similar to what we just did on the 2 examples. So give it a try, pause the video, see if you can work through it on your own, and then come back and watch the rest of this to make sure that you're starting to understand this. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that you've already paused and you're coming back to find the answer for this. Okay, so Sylvia's making a salad with tomatoes, cucumbers, and mozzarella cheese. Use the clues to find the amount of each ingredient. Okay, 3/6, 2/5, and 3/4. There is a less amount of tomatoes. So now I'm going to write it differently. Tomatoes are less. Remember, we had the other symbol the other time. This is the less than. Tomatoes are less than cucumbers. And there's a less amount of cheese than tomatoes. Oh, I'm going to have to, it goes cucumbers. I'm going to have to rewrite this. Cheese. Ha, they almost tricked me, but I didn't let them. Okay, so that's how it should be. There's a less amount of cheese than tomatoes. There is a less amount of tomatoes than cucumbers. So that's how that one will look. Now I'm going to take my 3/6, 2/5, and 3/4. I can draw my pictures. I'll do my pictures really quick. So I've got 3/6, 2/5, and 3/4. And for those who can't tell from the visual which one is least and greatest, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write my multiples of 6, 5, and 4. Okay, so I write my multiples for 6, 5, and 4. And the yucky part about this is we had to go all the way out to 60 to find the least common multiple. So we're going to change all our denominators to 60. Now 6 times 10 is 60. 3 times 10 is 30. Now 5 to 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 2 times 12 is 24. 4 times what is 60? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 3 times 15 is 45. So now I've got 30 60ths, 24 60ths, and 45 60ths. And I can see 45 60ths is the greatest, so that's going to match the cucumbers. So 3/4 will be the cucumbers. Then we've got 30 60ths is the next, which matches to 3/6, which is going to make it the tomatoes. And we've got 24, which is the least, so 2/5 is going to be the amount for the cheese. Now I'm hoping that some of you saw that 3/6 is actually 1/2, because that would have saved us a whole lot of time on our multiples, but I'm not sure that everybody was going to see that, so I wanted to show out all the way to do this with the divisors that they actually gave us in the problem. So use the multiple chart. If you can print one out, that's awesome. If not, there are some online that can be helpful. All right. Mason walked on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Used the clues to find how far he walked each day. The distances were 6/8 of a mile, 1/4 of a mile, and 1/6 of a mile. He did not walk the farthest on Monday. He walked less on Friday than on Monday. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and see if you can work this out, and then come back to check your answer. Okay, so I just set up greatest, middle, and least, and then I put my less than symbols to help me. Okay, and it says he did not walk the farthest on Monday, so that means Monday can't be here. It also says he walked less on Friday than on Monday, which means Monday can't be the least, because Friday has to be less than Monday. That tells me that Monday is going to go here. Friday is going to go here, and that leaves Wednesday for the greatest. Now that I have this piece, that was a little bit trickier to figure out than the other problems. Now I can take my fractions and compare them and figure out which matches which day. Okay, so I've got 6/8, 1/4, and 1/6. And if you can tell from this visual which is least and which is greatest, that's awesome. If you can't, we can go ahead and write our multiples of 8, 4, and 6, and we can work out the equivalent fractions and compare them that way when we get the common denominator. Okay, so let me write my multiples. Okay, so now I've got all my 8s, my 4s, and my 6s written out. And I see 8 here and here, but there's no 8 here. I see 16 here and here, but it's not here. 24 is here, 24 is here, and 24 is here. So that means 24 is my least common multiple, my LCM, and that's going to be my new denominator for all of these. Now I'm going to figure out what did I multiply to get from this to this. I multiplied by 3. 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 6, 1 times 6. 6 times 4, times 4 on top. So now I've got 18 24ths, which matches 6/8. I've got 6 24ths, which matches 1/4. And I've got 4 24ths, which matches 1/6. So if I can't tell from the pictures, then I can tell from the numerators on my fractions once I've got common denominators. 18 24ths is by far the biggest, so that's going to go with greatest over here. 18 24ths matches 6/8. The middle will be the 6 24ths, which matches to 1/4. and the least will be 4/24, which matches to 1/6. And that makes sense because you can see this picture clearly has the most blue, this picture has the middle, and this one has the least. So these pictures can be really, or these models can be really helpful, and they can save you time. But they can be less accurate, especially if you're not making equal sections. So let's move on. Emma saw birds, fish, and bears at the zoo. 1/3 of the animals did not have feathers or fur. Okay, so if it didn't have feathers and fur, it must have been the fish. 1/2 of the animals have 4 legs. Okay, so if it had 4 legs, it can't be the fish and it can't be the birds, it has to be the bears. There were 1/6 of the animals left. What fraction of the animals were birds? Okay, so 1/3 of the animals did not have feathers or fur. If it didn't have feathers or fur, that leaves the fish. Make sense? Okay, 1/2 of the animals had 4 legs, and the only one that has 4 legs is the bears. There were 1/6 of the animals left. What fraction of the animals were birds? Okay, so what I would write for my sentence here is 1/6 of the animals were birds. And that seemed actually easier than the other ones. Okay, let's look what's coming next. Okay, on 534, what's coming next is a trick. You really have to read this because if you just look at the picture and try to answer the questions, you're gonna get them wrong. This is a trick problem. You have to read. Okay, it says Emil bought his mom a dozen roses. If you don't know how many a dozen is, you're going to get the wrong answer. So the first thing you need to know is a dozen doesn't equal what it's showing in the picture. A dozen actually equals 12. And if you count in the picture, they're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they're not showing the full amount of roses that Emil bought. Okay? Some of the roses are shown below. That's where the trick comes in, ladies and gentlemen. Some of the roses are shown. It's not showing all of the roses. And here's the part that tells me. This is the trick part. The rest are white. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the mystery roses are 11, 12. And it says here they're white. So these are both going to be white roses. Now, of which color were there the most? Well, if I've got 2, 4, 6 red, and now it would look like, if I hadn't read my problem carefully, it would look like the most were red. But once I've read carefully and I see that there are 2 whites that were missing from my picture, I can see that there actually is no color that there are the most. The colors are equal. So that's a trick. What fraction of the roses were that color? So you're going to have the same amount for each. So of which color were there the most? Neither one. The fraction of the roses in that color? Well, since there are 6 out of 12 that are red and 6 out of 12 that are white, I could write 6 out of 12, but that's not in simplest form, and it says right here, write it in simplest form. So I can look at 6 12ths, and I can write out my factors of 6 and 12. 1 times 6, 2 times 3. 12 has 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. So I have 1, 2, and 3 as common, and 6. So I'm going to divide by 6 on top and bottom. 6 times what is 6? 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times what is 12? 6 times 2 is, or you could say 12 divided by 6, 6 divided by 6. In any case, you're going to end up with 1/2, which is what the correct answer is. 6/12 equals 1/2. Oops, that looks like a greater than sign. I meant to make an equals sign. So that was a tricky problem. Don't let it trick you. Okay, if Dirk ran, 8/10 of a mile at track practice and Leslie ran 80/100 of a mile, who ran farther? Hopefully you'll see as soon as I write this. 8/10 of a mile, and we're comparing that. We're comparing that to 80/100. There we go, now it looks better. And hopefully you'll see that if I try to make common denominators, I can take 10 times 10 and that gives me 100. And if I do the same on the top, 8 times 10 is going to give me 80. Look at that. So 8/10 is actually equal to 80/100. So when it asks who ran farther, neither Dirk and Leslie ran an equal distance. Okay, so now we've got Mrs. Keys has 36 pens. Yesterday she had half that amount plus 2. So if she has 36, yesterday she had half that, so I'm going to divide that by 2 and then add 2. And that's basically taking what it has in words and putting into math. 36, half that, plus 2. So 36 divided by 2, and then I'm going to add 2 to that. You can do that, and you're going to write the sentence, Mrs. Keys had blank pens yesterday. Okay, you can do that math. There are bananas, pears, and peaches in a bag. 1/8 of the fruits are pears, 1/2 are bananas. Are there more pears or bananas? So if we've got 1/8 of pears, and we're comparing that with the bananas. Let me write that. So I have 1/8 pears compared to 1/2 bananas. Now if I'm going to draw the picture, it's going to be really apparent because we've talked about this if the numerator is the same, the bigger denominator means it's cut into smaller pieces. The smaller pieces means the smaller amount you get. This one is a much smaller denominator, which means it's cut into fewer pieces, which means you get a bigger part of the whole. So hopefully that picture helps you really see that if you have a half of the fruit's bananas, you're going to have a lot more bananas than you're going to have pears. Okay, so this long video got you all the way through the lesson. All you have left is the homework on page 535. It just has an example for you, and then page 536 is a couple problems for you to work on. So that is all you have to do independently on your own. The rest is all in the video for you, and I hope that you continue to work hard because I know you can do this. Thanks so much.